Hey gamers, Souls-like games have come a long way from being a niche genre, enjoyed by only the most dedicated players. What started as a formula inspired by challenging combat, demanding boss fights, and rewarding exploration has now grown into one of the most competitive genres in gaming. And 2026 might be one of the strongest years we've seen so far, so in this video we're taking a look at the best Souls-like games released in 2026. Alright then, without further ado, let's get started. Starting number 15, we have Crimson Oath. This game takes heavy inspiration from Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, but adds its own spin with character builds, firearms, and a world driven by political conflict and religious power struggles. You play as a student of the Dragon Academy, a school founded by William before his death, and soon find yourself caught in a continent-wide war between rival factions and competing beliefs. The thing that immediately stands out is the combat. The Makiri counter is back. Yeah, the same move that made shutting down thrust attacks in Sekiro feels so damn good. If you've spent hundreds of hours playing Sekiro, you'll probably jump into Crimson Oath and immediately think, yep, this is exactly the kind of Souls-like I've been waiting for. Next, we have Crimson Capes, is a 2D dark fantasy action RPG that wears its Souls-like inspiration on its sleeve. You play as Milan, the king's right-hand man and leader of a witch-hunting organization fighting through a kingdom drowning in corruption, conspiracies, and total chaos. The premise is packed with political intrigue, religious conflict, and mystery, but the storytelling never quite hits hard enough to make you truly care about the characters or the fate of the world. Thankfully, the combat is where the game really delivers. Every attack, dodge, and parry demands proper timing since stamina management plays a huge role in every fight. The stance and parry systems add another layer of strategy, making duels feel tense and rewarding instead of just mindlessly swinging your weapon around. So yeah, if you're into Souls-likes and have been looking for a solid 2D take on the genre, Crimson Capes is definitely a game that deserves a spot on your playlist. If you're into nailing parry timings and enjoy side-scrolling 2D Souls-like games, then yeah, GRIME 2 is probably worth checking out. If you've played the first GRIME, you'll feel right at home since you're once again playing as a formless. At its core, it's still a Metroidvania, with plenty of exploration, platforming, and new abilities that let you access areas you couldn't reach before. Combat remains the main attraction, and parrying is still a huge part of the experience. A lot of people are getting tired of the whole parry or get wrecked trend that's showing up in more and more modern games, and GRIME 2 definitely leans into that. That said, the sequel gives you way more build options, skills, and abilities to absorb powers from enemies, making combat feel a lot more flexible and customizable than it did in the first game. Another 2D Souls-like in Metroidvania category, we've got Kotama and Academy Citadel. You play as Kotama, a student at the Academy who's trying to become the next Carmel star. Gameplay is built around fast-paced combat where mistakes get punished hard. Kotama can go down in just a few hits, so you'll need to rely on dodging and parrying throughout the entire game if you want to survive. The game's core mechanic revolves around Chrono Fluid. You coat enemies with it through your attacks, then ignite it to deal massive damage and stun them. Because of that, combat feels aggressive and rewards skillful play instead of mindlessly mashing buttons. And honestly, the boss fights are where the game shines the most. The boss roster gets pretty wild, ranging from fish-headed thugs to a giant crab robot wearing a chef's hat. Yeah, it's as ridiculous as it sounds.
They're used to protect what matters most.
The Relic First Guardian is very clearly aiming for the Souls-like crowd, but with Korean mythology serving as its main identity, you play as the First Guardian, a warrior tasked with collecting the fragments of an ancient relic to seal the void that has devastated the continent of Arsiltus. Once a thriving land, Arsiltis has been transformed into a realm filled with death and monsters after the Relic's destruction. One of the game's more ambitious features is its roster of over 70 bosses known as Brutals. Each one comes with its own tragic backstory and personal downfall. Defeating them doesn't just reward you with loot and upgrades, you also uncover the story behind the monster you just put in the ground. It's a concept that feels similar to how modern Souls-likes try to make bosses feel like actual characters, rather than just another roadblock standing between you and the next checkpoint.
That's how I survive. Break, tear, burn.
Kristala is a Souls-like that wears its Dark Souls inspiration right on its sleeve, blending melee combat, magic, and fast movement into a solid package. You play as a member of the feline Anagativa race, exploring the world of Olur as a mysterious curse slowly tears everything apart. At the start, you can pick from classes like Assassin, Knight, Warrior, Spellblade, Battle Mage, or Shaman, then choose a clan that shapes the kind of magic you'll use. Those choices give you a starting direction, but your build really comes together through the skills, spells, and upgrades you unlock along the way. What helps Kristala stand out is its mobility. You're not just rolling around waiting for openings like in a lot of Souls-likes. You can sprint, climb, jump, and pull off parkour-style moves that make exploration feel much faster and more engaging. If you're looking for a Souls-like that mixes swords, magic, and agile movement, Kristala is definitely worth a look. Blades of Fire is an action RPG built around weapon crafting, durability management, and a combat system that actually cares about where you're hitting an enemy. Yeah, it's a pretty refreshing idea compared to a lot of action RPGs that mostly revolve around dodging and mashing attack buttons. The biggest highlight is easily the forging system. You're not just crafting a sword or spear and calling it a day. Every material comes with different stats, affecting armor penetration, durability, weapon reach, and repair costs. Combat is also more thoughtful than it first appears. Different enemies have different defenses, so you'll need to choose the right weapon and attack type for the job. Combined with stamina management and a parry system that rewards good timing, fights feel more tactical than just memorizing patterns and rolling around non-stop. Mistfall Hunter is an extraction RPG that combines extraction shooter mechanics with Souls-like combat. You'll enter dangerous dungeons, collect loot, and try to escape alive before losing everything you've gathered. Along the way, you'll fight monsters, find better gear, and run into other players chasing the same rewards. The Gildan Mist, a shrinking fog similar to a battle royale circle, constantly pushes players deeper into the dungeon and increases the chances of PvP encounters. Combat focuses on melee attacks, dodging, and class-based abilities. Classes include the aggressive mercenary and the stealth-focused Shadow Strix. Loot can also be stored in a shared warehouse, allowing all of your characters to benefit from successful runs. If the balance between progression, loot, and PvP holds up, Mistfall Hunter could be an extraction RPG worth keeping an eye on. Lords of the Fallen 2 is making some major changes to combat. Yup, the fights are much more aggressive, with a bigger focus on risk versus reward. Instead of playing defensively, you're encouraged to stay on the offensive and keep the pressure on enemies. The new execution system lets you finish off enemies with brutal kill animations, while jumping adds extra mobility during combat and exploration. CI Games is also tackling one of the biggest complaints about the last game. Lords of the Fallen 2 will feature 7 biomes, 7 enemy factions, and far more enemy variety throughout the adventure. Dual wielding has been reworked, weapon animations have been expanded, and the magic system has been streamlined to feel smoother and more responsive. Based on the gameplay shown so far, Lords of the Fallen 2 looks like a significant step up from its predecessor. Dinoblade is an absurd Souls-like, where dinosaurs run around swinging giant swords, and somehow the game takes that idea completely seriously. It sounds like a joke at first, but once you start playing, it feels like a weird mix of Souls-like combat and fast-paced action gameplay. The core gameplay sticks to the usual Souls-like formula with light attacks, heavy attacks, dodges, blocks, parries, a stamina system, and special abilities. The difference is that your dinosaur is ridiculously agile, pulling off long combos and acrobatic moves that make combat feel much faster and more aggressive than most games in the genre. Combat can feel a little janky at times, but that honestly becomes part of the charm. Beneath the rough presentation is a surprisingly solid combat system, especially thanks to the posture mechanic that heavily rewards players who can consistently land well-timed parries. Code Vein 2 still sticks to its anime Souls-like identity with the flexible blood code build system, AI companions, and a surprisingly interesting time travel story. The ability to jump between the past and present actually has a noticeable impact on the world you're exploring, and some of the side quests end up being more engaging than the main story itself. As for combat, the foundation is solid. The blood code system lets you switch builds whenever you want without creating a new character, while the mix of weapons, skills, magic, and ichor gives battles plenty of variety, and yeah, some bosses deliver the kind of tough, satisfying fights that make finally taking them down feel worth the effort. But here's the real question. Do you actually believe that? Valor Mortis is a new first-person action RPG from One More Level, the studio behind Ghost Runner. You play as William, a soldier who wakes up in a mass grave armed with a saber, a pistol, and mysterious magical powers embedded in his hand. While it definitely has some Souls-like DNA, the combat feels much faster and way more aggressive. Instead of hiding behind a shield and waiting for an opening, the game pushes you to stay on the move, chaining together dashes, jumps, parries, and magical abilities to keep the pressure on your enemies. The Ghost Runner influence is hard to miss. Just like Ghost Runner, combat is built around speed, precision, and constant movement. The difference is that Valor Mortis takes that philosophy and expands it into a larger action RPG experience with character progression, exploration, and challenging boss fights. Mortal Shell 2 is the sequel to Cold Symmetry's Souls-like, and this time it's faster, more aggressive, and way more brutal than the original. While the first game stuck closer to the traditional Souls formula with slower combat and heavy stamina management, Mortal Shell 2 pushes things toward a much more action-focused direction. And yeah, now there are guns. Not just some backup ranged weapon either. We're talking revolvers, shotguns, and even a machine gun crossbow as core parts of combat. Not only that, the shell system is also back. You can swap between different shells, each with its own abilities and playstyle, giving you more build variety beyond just weapons and gear. The whole game is ridiculously edgy in the best possible way. Brutal finishers, horrifying monsters, giant weapons, shotguns, heavy metal energy. Mortal Shell 2 looks like someone threw Doom and a Souls-like into a blender and somehow made it work. No Rest for the Wicked is isometric action RPG with loot system that actually feels much closer to a Souls-like once you start playing. Combat is heavy, enemies hit hard, and every fight demands good timing and stamina management. One of the biggest differences from other Souls-likes is how death works. When you die, enemies you've already killed don't automatically respawn. That makes progression feel a bit less punishing and lets you keep pushing forward even after getting your ass kicked by a tough area or boss multiple times. On the flip side, the game features weapon and armor durability. Your gear wears down over time, forcing you to make use of whatever weapons and equipment you can find during exploration. It's a pretty controversial system because repeated deaths can leave you low on resources and struggling to repair your gear, but it also creates a survival-like tension that most Souls-likes don't have. Nioh 3 still proves why it's one of the best Souls-likes out there that isn't made by Team Ninja's usual rival, From Software. This time, Team Ninja goes bigger with a more open structure, though don't expect a true open world. It's really a bunch of large interconnected zones stitched together. Exploration feels more rewarding, constantly pushing you towards side activities, hidden paths, and optional challenges scattered across each region. Combat is still the star of the show, delivering the fast, responsive, and deeply satisfying fights the series is known for. The new Samurai and Ninja split gives players two distinct playstyles to master, and both are fun as hell in their own ways. Co-op is once again a damn good time, letting you tackle almost the entire game with a friend, even if the online connection occasionally decides to be a pain in the ass. And that's it for today. Those were lists the top 15 Souls-like games you need to play in 2026. Got a hidden gem I didn't mention? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video or discovered a new title to add to your collection, feel free to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you'll never miss future content. Once again, if you want to buy games with cheap price, the link in the description, okay? So thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.